In some corners of the world, land is optional. Entire communities have chosen to build their lives on water, not for show, but for survival and tradition. From floating villages in Cambodia to stilt cities in Nigeria, these water dwellers have created full societies without ever setting foot on solid ground. Children learn to swim before they can walk. Meals are cooked just feet above the waves. Some even get their mail delivered by boat. They fish from their doorsteps, play sports on floating platforms, and navigate their neighborhoods with paddles instead of pedals. In a world racing towards skyscrapers and smart cities, their stories quietly redefine how we think about home, community, and what it means to live in true sync with the environment. Tonlay Sap Floating, Villages, Cambodia. Imagine living in a house that rises and falls 15 feet every year. That's the reality on Cambodia's Tonlay Sap Lake, Southeast Asia's largest freshwater lake, and home to entire villages that literally float. When the monsoons arrive, the lake swells to 5 times its size, swallowing forests, roads, and fields. But instead of fleeing, the people here rise with the flood. Their homes lift, their schools lift, even the local barbershop lifts like an entire town on invisible strings. Here, Vietnamese and Cham families don't just survive on the water, they've built a way of life around it. Homes are constructed on enormous bamboo pontoons or empty fuel drums that bob with the current. Wooden walkways connect house to house like floating streets, and boats are the family car. Kids jump between rooftops, racing barefoot across tin sheets like it's a giant jungle gym. There's no need for a yard when your backyard is an endless lake, and everything floats: schools, churches, gas stations, basketball courts. It's like a regular town, just wetter. Teachers paddle to class. Vendors sell snacks from their boats. Even weddings happen on water, with guests arriving in a flotilla of canoes. But this isn't some quirky experiment in eco-living. These villages have been here for generations. Families pass down ancient knowledge about building houses that bend, and to break about reading cloud formations and predicting how high the water will rise each season. When the lake surges 20 feet in a single month, the village doesn't panic. It just goes up with it. And if that's not wild enough, their food lives right underneath them. Massive submerged cages hang beneath the homes like underwater farms. They raise catfish, tilapia, even crocodiles just feet from where they sleep. That's right, crocodiles. Floating above apex predators has somehow become normal. You want fresh dinner? Just lift the floorboard. This is water living in its purest form. Not a resort, not a novelty, but a thriving, self-sustaining community that rises and falls with the rhythm of nature. Makoko, Nigeria. In the heart of Lagos, Nigeria, just behind the skyscrapers, and beneath the roar of urban life, lies a city you won't find on most maps. It's called Makoko, and it's not built on land, but on stilts, canoes, and pure determination. Over 300,000 people live here, completely on water. Makoko isn't a secret anymore, but it still feels like a world apart. Imagine rush hour, but instead of cars and buses, it's thousands of wooden canoes slicing through narrow water channels. Kids paddle themselves to school before they can even spell paddle. Women haul fish to floating markets at dawn. Men ferry timber to floating workshops. It's organized chaos, and one wrong move means you're swimming with your groceries. Houses rise on spindly wooden stilts that sink deep into the soft lagoon floor. Some are so tall they look like they're tiptoeing above the water. Others are so low fish swim through the cracks. There's no plumbing, no grid, no trash trucks or street lights, and yet life pulses here with energy. Makoko has its own everything, its own schools, with blackboards balanced on floating rafts, its own churches, where choirs sway gently with the tide, its own informal mayor, selected by the community, even a floating sawmill, where workers chop, measure, and sandwood while standing ankle-deep in water. The Nigerian government often labels it a slum unfit, unsanitary, illegal. But the people who live here, they see it differently. They've built homes, families, businesses. They've created order in a place the city forgot. They survive, thrive in conditions most people couldn't handle for a single day. Makoko may not have skyscrapers, but it has spirit. It may not have paved roads, but it has direction. And when 300,000 people say, "This is where we live, this is home," you start to wonder, who gets to decide what a real city looks like? Inlay Lake Stilt Villages, Myanmar. Myanmar's Inlay Lake looks like something from a fairy tale. Bamboo houses stretch into the mist. Fishermen row with their legs while their hands stay free to work. Gardens literally float on the water's surface, drifting wherever the current takes them. The Intha people have lived here for over 1,000 years. They've developed a way of life so perfectly adapted to water that they make it look effortless. But don't be fooled, this is survival mastery disguised as art. These floating gardens are genius. They're built from water hyacinth and lake mud, creating floating soil that's incredibly fertile. Tomatoes, cucumbers, beans, everything grows bigger and better on these drifting plots. When the harvest is done, they can literally move their farm to a new location. The leg rowing technique isn't just for show. When you're standing up, you can see fish moving beneath the surface. You can spot birds in the reeds. You can watch for weather changes. It's like having a watchtower that moves with you. But the most incredible part, the entire community is connected by water. Need to visit your neighbour? Paddle over. Want to go to market? Paddle there. Doctor's appointment? You guessed it, paddle time. Cars are useless here. The water is the highway. Uros Floating Islands, Peru. On Lake Titicaca, 12,500 feet above sea level, the Uros people have built something that shouldn't exist. Islands made entirely from grass. Not grass-covered islands. Islands made of grass. 42 floating islands that have been home to the same families for over 500 years. These aren't small patches of land. Some islands are big enough for 30 families. They have community centres, schools, and watchtowers, all built on nothing but totora reeds that grow in the lake. The process is mesmerising. They harvest reeds, weave them into massive mats, then layer mat upon mat until they create a floating platform thick enough to support entire communities. The islands are so buoyant that walking on them feels like walking on a giant waterbed. But here's the crazy part. The islands are constantly decomposing. The bottom layers rot away while new layers get added on top. It's like living on a slow-motion treadmill made of grass. Every few months they have to add fresh reeds or risk watching their island literally dissolve beneath their feet. The Uros people originally built these islands to escape the Incas. They wanted to live somewhere no army could reach. Mission accomplished. Even today, if they don't like their neighbours, they can untie their island and float away. Try doing that in your suburban neighbourhood. Halong Bay Floating Villages, Vietnam. Halong Bay's limestone cliffs are famous worldwide, but hidden between those towering rocks are villages that most tourists never see. Families who have lived their entire lives on houseboats, moving from cave to cave, following the fish and the tides. These aren't vacation houseboats. These are homes that have been in families for generations. Grandparents who were born on the water, raised their children on the water, and will die on the water. The only solid ground they touch is the occasional visit to shore for supplies. The boats are floating ecosystems. Fish farms underneath provide food and income. Solar panels on top provide power. Rain collectors provide fresh water. It's like having a self-sufficient space station, except it's floating on emerald water, surrounded by ancient limestone. The children here learn to dive before they learn to walk. By age 5, they can free dive 30 feet to check fish nets. By age 10, they're master boat pilots navigating between jagged rocks in storms that would terrify experienced sailors. But the most incredible part, these families have mapped every cave, every current, every underwater formation in the bay. They know where the fish hide during storms. They know which caves have fresh water. They know secrets about Halong Bay that no scientist has ever discovered. Koh Phanyi, Thailand. In the middle of Phang Nga Bay, built entirely on stilts, sits Koh Phanyi. This village of 1,600 people was founded by 3 families in the 18th century. Today, it's a floating city that proves water communities can be both traditional and modern. The mosque sits at the village centre, its golden dome reflecting in the water below. Around it, houses stretch in every direction, connected by wooden walkways that creak and sway with the tide. But here's what's incredible. They have a floating soccer field. Not a field near the water, a field on the water. When the tide comes in, the field floats. When the tide goes out, it settles on the mud. The kids here have learned to play soccer on a surface that moves. Imagine trying to score a goal when the field is rocking back and forth. The village has its own school, its own government, its own economy. They've built a complete society on stilts. Fish markets that smell like the ocean. Restaurants where your table literally overlooks the water where your dinner was caught hours ago. But the most impressive part, they've done all this without destroying the environment. The stilts allow water to flow freely underneath. Fish swim through the village. Crabs scurry across the walkways. It's like they've learned to live with the water instead of fighting against it. Ganvi, Benin. They call it the Venice of Africa, but Ganvi's story is much more dramatic. This village of 20,000 people exists because of one of history's darkest chapters, the slave trade. When slave raiders swept through West Africa, the Tofinu people fled to Lake Nokwe. They knew their enemies couldn't follow them onto the water. They were right. The raiders' horses couldn't swim. Their weapons couldn't reach across the water. So the Tofinu people built a city on stilts and made the lake their fortress. What started as a desperate escape became a thriving civilization. The houses here are built on bamboo stilts that stretch deep into the lake bed. Some are over 100 years old, passed down through generations of the same families. The village has its own market, its own school, its own floating church, where people arrive by canoe for Sunday service. But the most incredible part, They've turned the lake into a massive fish farm. Underwater, they've built thousands of fish traps using branches and bamboo. The fish swim in, but they can't swim out. It's like having a grocery store that stocks itself. The children here learn to swim before they learn to walk. By age 3, they're diving for shells. By age 5, they're helping with the fish traps. By age 10, they can navigate the entire lake in a dugout canoe. It's like growing up in a real-life Atlantis. Loktak Lake, Phumdis, India. In India's Manipur state, on Loktak Lake, nature has created something impossible: floating islands that aren't man-made. These phumdis are made of decomposing plants and soil that have somehow learned to float. And on these natural rafts, the Sangai deer, found nowhere else on Earth, make their home. But humans live here too. Fishing communities have built their homes on circular floating huts called phumshangs. These aren't just houses, they're complete fishing stations that can be moved wherever the fish are biting. The lake changes constantly. In the dry season, the phumdis cluster together like puzzle pieces. In the wet season, they spread out across the water like green carpets. The people here have learned to read these changes like a book. They know when the fish will be running. They know when the weather will turn. They know which phumdis are stable enough to support a house and which ones will sink if you step on them wrong. It's like living on a constantly changing jigsaw puzzle where the pieces are islands. The most incredible part: the ecosystem is so delicate that the slightest change can destroy everything. These families have become the guardians of one of the world's most unique environments. They're not just living on the water, they're protecting it. Baja Sea Nomads, Philippines. Meet the ultimate water people, the Baja Sea Nomads. These families haven't just adapted to water life, they've evolved for it. Their spleens are 50% larger than normal humans, allowing them to hold their breath for up to 13 minutes. They can dive 200 feet down without any equipment. They can see clearly underwater. They're literally becoming aquatic humans. Some Baja families haven't set foot on land in decades. They live their entire lives on boats, following the fish across the coral triangle. When a child is born, they're given a boat instead of a bedroom. When they die, their boats become their coffins. These aren't small fishing boats. These are floating homes with multiple rooms, kitchens, and sleeping areas. Extended families live together on flotillas of boats tied together. It's like having a neighborhood that can sail away whenever they want. The children here learn to dive before they learn to walk. By age 5, they can hold their breath for minutes. By age 10, they're free diving 100 feet to spearfish. By age 15, they're master boat builders and navigators who can read the ocean like a map. But here's what's truly incredible. They have no word for sea in their language. To them, the ocean isn't a place you visit. It's not something separate from the land. It is their land. They see the water as solid ground and the islands as obstacles to navigate around. Githorn, Netherlands. In the Netherlands, there's a village that looks like it was designed by fairy tale writers. Githorn has no roads, no cars, no traffic noise, just crystal clear canals winding between thatched roof houses that date back 700 years. The only way to get around is by boat. Mail gets delivered by boat, doctors make house calls by boat, kids go to school by boat. Even the fire department arrives by boat. It's like stepping into a world where cars were never invented. The houses here are built on small islands, connected by arched bridges. Each home has its own mooring spot where families keep their boats like other people keep cars in garages. The boats are so quiet that the loudest sound you'll hear is ducks quacking or wind rustling through reeds. But this isn't some museum village. Real people live here. They work here. They raise families here. They've just chosen to do it all without cars, without noise, without the chaos of modern life. It's like someone took a perfectly peaceful village and made it even more peaceful by surrounding it with water. The most incredible part? The canals were dug by hand over 700 years ago. Peat miners created this waterway system, and it's still working perfectly today. It's like having a transportation system that's older than most countries and runs better than most modern cities. Sundarbans Water Villages, Bangladesh. In the Sundarbans, the world's largest mangrove forest, water villages exist in one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. This isn't just about living on water. This is about living on water with Bengal tigers, saltwater crocodiles, and cyclones that can destroy everything in hours. The houses here are built on stilts that can withstand massive storm surges. They're designed to bend but not break when cyclones hit. The families keep boats tied to their homes at all times because they never know when they'll need to evacuate fast. But the most incredible part? They've learned to live with tigers. Not just avoid them, actually coexist with them. They know which channels the tigers use. They know what times tigers hunt. They know how to make noise to scare them away and when to stay absolutely silent. The honey collectors here might have the most dangerous job on Earth. They paddle deep into tiger territory to collect wild honey from massive hives. One wrong move could mean facing a tiger, getting stung by thousands of bees, or getting lost in a maze of identical-looking channels. Children here learn to identify tiger tracks, read tide charts, and predict cyclones by watching bird behavior. It's like growing up in a real-life survival school where graduation means staying alive. Togoville, Togo. On Lake Togo in West Africa, stilt villages serve as the spiritual heart of traditional African religions. These aren't just fishing communities, they're sacred places where ancient voodoo traditions are still practiced daily. The houses here are built over water that's considered holy. Families believe their ancestors live in the lake, and the water itself has healing powers. People come from across West Africa to visit the sacred shrines that rise from the water on stilts. The village chief here isn't just a political leader, he's a spiritual guide who can communicate with the ancestors through the water. Ceremonies happen on floating platforms under the full moon. Drums echo across the water, while dancers move in the moonlight. But this isn't some tourist show. These are real religious practices that have been passed down for thousands of years. The families here are the guardians of ancient knowledge about healing, spirituality, and the connection between humans and water. The most incredible part? The lake never completely dries up. Even during the worst droughts, the people here say it's because their ancestors protect the water. Scientists say it's because of underground springs. Either way, the water always provides. Taio Fishing Village, Hong Kong. In ultra-modern Hong Kong, Taio Fishing Village feels like stepping back in time. These traditional stilt houses, called Pang UK, line the tidal channels, preserving a way of life that's almost extinct everywhere else in the region. The tanker people here were Hong Kong's original boat dwellers. They lived on junks and sampans for generations, only coming to shore to trade. Even now, many families still live in traditional boathouses that rise and fall with the tide. The village smells like dried fish and salt air. Narrow wooden walkways connect houses that have been in the same families for over a century. Old women sit on their doorsteps sorting shrimp, while pink dolphins swim in the harbour just meters away. But here's what's incredible. They're surrounded by one of the world's most expensive real estate markets, yet they've maintained their traditional lifestyle. While luxury apartments sell for millions just across the water, these families still fish with traditional methods their great-grandparents used. The most amazing part? They can see the Hong Kong skyline from their traditional stilt houses. It's like having 1 foot in the past and 1 foot in the future, with water holding it all together. Chateau Jiao houseboats, China. Along China's Pearl River, the tanker boat people have maintained their floating communities despite massive urban development happening all around them. These traditional junk boats have been converted into permanent homes where families have lived for generations. The boats here aren't just homes, they're floating neighbourhoods. Extended families tie their boats together to create clusters of houses that move with the tide. Children jump from boat to boat like they're hopping between houses on a street. But the most incredible part, these floating communities exist in the shadow of some of China's most modern cities. Shenzhen's skyscrapers rise in the background while these families maintain a lifestyle that's thousands of years old. The boat people here have their own culture, their own dialect, their own traditions. They've been discriminated against for centuries, but the water has always been their refuge. No matter what happens on land, they know they can always return to their boats. Amazon River floating homes, Brazil. In the Amazon, entire communities rise and fall with the river's dramatic seasonal changes. When the river floods, these houses float up to the treetops. When it recedes, they settle back down to ground level. It's like living on a giant water elevator that takes 6 months to go up and 6 months to come down. The houses here are built on massive log platforms that can handle a water level change of 40 feet. That's like having your house on the 4th floor one day and on the ground floor the next. The families here have learned to live with constant change. During flood season, children paddle canoes to school through the treetops. During dry season, they walk the same route on dry land. Their playgrounds change from forest floors to underwater wonderlands, depending on the time of year. But the most incredible part, they've learned to use the floods to their advantage. When the water rises, fish spread into the forest. The families here know exactly where to find them. They've turned the Amazon's biggest challenge into their greatest opportunity. The people here don't fight the water. They dance with it. They've learned that the river gives and takes, but if you respect it, it will always provide. It's a lesson that the rest of the world is just starting to understand. These water people have cracked the code of something the rest of us are just beginning to understand: how to live with water instead of fighting against it. While cities around the world struggle with floods and rising sea levels, these communities have been thriving on water for centuries. They've built homes that float, communities that rise and fall with the tides, and societies that see water as a friend, not an enemy. From the floating islands of Peru to the stilt villages of Cambodia, from the sea nomads of Southeast Asia to the canal villages of the Netherlands, these water people are showing us the future of human adaptation. They're not just surviving, they're thriving in ways that challenge everything we think we know about how humans should live. What can we learn from them? Maybe the answer to our water challenges isn't building higher walls, but learning to swim. If this incredible journey through the world's floating communities amazed you, smash that like button and let me know in the comments which water village you'd most like to visit. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon for more mind-blowing stories about the incredible ways humans adapt to our planet's most extreme environments.